across India, in many states like Kerala and Odisha, we are seeing strikes by Asha workers. In 2018, the WHO recognized Asha's contribution to reducing maternal and infant mortality. During the pandemic in 2020 and 21, the WHO recognized them for their responses during the pandemic. And in May 2022, the WHO recognized them as global health leaders. But despite all these recognitions and the realization how important Asha workers are to our healthcare systems, they remain underpaid across states, and there have been struggles for past few years. In Kerala, of course, it's become a huge news as the strike has been going on for more than 27 or 28 days. And Kerala is not the only state. As I said, the strike is ongoing in Odisha now. In Bihar too, there are strikes going on. So how are the Asha workers paid? Now, it's basically not a very systemic thing. The Asha program was launched in 2005 under the National Rural Health Mission. So basically, Asha workers acted as a bridge in the rural areas. But realizing how important they were, in 2013, they were also included in the National Urban Health Mission. So you have Asha workers working in both urban and rural areas. And they are really important because they do a lot of last mile connectivity in the health sector. Now, how are they paid? There is something called honorarium and there is an incentive. So this is a policy instituted by the union government in 2005, but the state governments have to pay the honorarium and the union government pays something called an incentive. Now, even this is not uniform across states. For example, South Indian states, from whatever I have gathered, I've spoken to a couple of people even in Bihar and Odisha. What they tell me is that in Kerala, for example, the state government pays 7,000 rupees as honorarium and the union government pays around 2,000 to 3,000 or perhaps even more as the incentive. This incentive is also performance based. Andhra Pradesh has the highest honorarium of 10,000 rupees per month. In Bihar, I was told, I spoke to people from the Asha Karyakarta Sangh of the AICCTU. They said that in Bihar, they get paid, there are 1 lakh Asha workers and only around 10,000 of them get paid 10,000 rupees. The rest of them get paid 3,000 rupees per month. There is no honorarium in Bihar. There is only incentive. Uttar Pradesh pays 1,500 rupees as honorarium. So there's absolutely no uniformity as to how Asha workers are paid. The states, there are some states which are paying more than 7,000 or up to 10,000. They're also under pressure now to increase the honorarium, and they're saying that, look, Kerala is saying we don't have money. We don't have money even to pay salaries of our own employees. How do we pay Asha workers? So I'm going to first bring in Malu Mohan, who is the guest joining us in this discussion. Malu is an independent public health researcher. She's worked in both Tamil Nadu and Kerala. In fact, Malu has written this article for the News Minute with Sapna Mishra and Srinidhi Srikumar. All of them are researchers and postdoctoral fellows. I really recommend that you read this article because they put in perspective as to how this whole concept of Asha workers is an extension that a woman should care for the family or for people around her. And so this is a role which is extended, right? From after your family, you care for society. And therefore, we look at that job as something which need not be paid too well. Because after all, it is a woman's duty to be caring and nurturing. The article is called Who Cares for the Carers? Calling out the exploitation of Ashas. Malu, let me bring you in here today. We are seeing strikes in Kerala. In fact, from today, the Asha workers in Kerala are going on a hunger strike, right? But there is a lot of controversy. Everybody is saying that why are these people striking against the state government? Their question should be to the union government, that you make us grade 4 employees or grade C employees. Why ask the states?
Thank you, Dhanya. Thank you for the opportunity. The first point that I would like to clarify is that the state governments need Asha workers. See, to whatever extent our work has revealed to us, we realize that state governments are heavily dependent on Asha workers. Although, Asha workers are operating under a central scheme. They are scheme-based workers. And Asha is not just the only scenario. I would like to take the opportunity of even an older scheme called ICDS, under which we have the Anganwadi workers, who are also actually going through the same plight. They are honorary workers. They have been for decades. They have contributed to basic determinants like nutrition and childcare. So these workers are actually delivering basic services to people. whether it's nutrition or basic health care, primary health care, child care, adolescent health. We cannot do away with any of these services. These services are inevitable and they're very, very critical. And if states are doing well in health, then that is because of the significant amount of work that these people put in. So, and this particular scheme, these scheme-based welfare projects and scheme-based community health projects, if you look at it like Asha or ICDS, these schemes are sort of a way of the government sort of washing hands or shrugging responsibility, saying that, you have these, you cannot do away without these social welfare schemes. There is a demand for these schemes. So it's almost like state behaving like a non-state and saying that, we are giving you these services, but let's find poor women from your own community to take care of you, and let's not even pay them well. Let's not even give them the respect of calling them workers. They are in this limbo. So if you ask me, are they formal or informal? They are working in a formal sector, but they're not workers. So they're not workers. So that is the main problem. So there is no respect. So even if you raise an honorarium by 1,000 or 2,000, even if you sort of take away the performance-based is a huge exploitation, because if they are voluntary workers, if they are honorary workers, then they should not have roles and responsibilities listed out. But you just type in under NHM, there are roles and responsibilities typed out for Ashas.
I think for a lot of people who are reading and watching about Asha workers, they actually don't understand what is the function which an Asha worker does, right? We all know, okay, there are some last mile connectivity, like I said, but could you quickly tell us what are the duties and responsibilities of an Asha worker?
There is an inherent contradiction in even in that question, because if you just read the definition, or if you read the basic document, you feel that they're some kind of bridge. They're activists, they're social health activists, they're community representatives to the health system. So you're making them sound active. But in fact, if you read the job descriptions, for instance, they are given responsibilities of registering pregnancies. They are to make sure that every pregnancy is reported to the health system. Women, they have to ensure that women receive their antenatal care service. Their primary responsibility when they started off was in maternal and child health, MCH, or reproductive health. So they have a responsibility in ensuring that women get antenatal health. Then women, have hospital deliveries, institutionalized deliveries. Then in immunization, and more importantly, they're expected to play a very crucial role in the documentation of these services. So we have to understand that in a country like us, where regular documentation and getting data is such a huge problem, the basic data that we have about our maternal health indicators are in fact coming through the work of Asha workers. So this is a huge responsibility. All our glories and achievements in maternal mortality reduction and maternal morbidity reduction and vaccine preventable deaths, how we have reduced them and all of that, we are heavily indebted to these women who were expected to work for 2 to 3 hours, and now they are full-time workers. They have hardly time to, from my experience in Kerala and Tamil Nadu does not have Asha workers. They have Asha workers only in selected districts like Nilgiri. But Tamil Nadu also has volunteers called women health workers who are now working with one of their non-communicable disease programs, primarily called Makkalai Thedi Maruthuvam. But all these states who use these women health volunteers, even the state governments, not just the central projects, even the state governments are heavily dependent on them primarily for documentation. That's one important fact that people are forgetting, that the basic data comes from them. And you have these innumerable apps. Digital documentation is one additional burden that anywhere you go. One additional complaint of them is that, we are doing double documentation. We have a register and then these apps that they simply cannot make sense with. And a very critical point which I want to make is this target-oriented work. Why are you giving them targets if they're not your employees? You have no right. You give them fill in 20, fill in 30. So it's almost like forcing them to fudge. They are not able to finish their tasks. You're giving them targets. And then there is this hierarchy of supervision. District administration will ask the block PHC. Block PHC will ask the PHC. PHC medical officer will ask the VHN. The VHN will then grind the Asha. So it all comes down to Asha. So it is not fair that the state governments anymore say that, it's a central scheme. It's not fair. If you take Kerala specifically, if you take Kerala's comprehensive primary healthcare document, it is in the public domain. I think then the word Asha has been repeated about 50 times. So if it is a central scheme, why are you so dependent on them? And why are you giving them tasks? Why are you giving them targets? So you have to take accountability. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, the irony continues, isn't it? Because especially during COVID, we heard everybody from the Prime Minister to everybody talking about how Ashas are the heroes. But it was during the COVID-19 pandemic that they were not paid dues. They were not given their honorarium for many months. Even that meager sum that they were entitled to, they didn't get it for months on end. And this is also the problem with how the legal framework of it all, right? Because in 2022, they did approach the Supreme Court. Asha workers petitioned for legal recognition as full-time employees, but the court upheld their status as volunteers. What were they asking for, right? They were asking for labor rights, minimum wages, provident fund because they have no PF, pensions and health insurance. They are going to, very, very dangerous areas where they can get they can get infections and what have you, but they don't have health insurance. Dhanya, if I could just, because our producer Bhuvan has painstakingly put together how much they get in each of the states. And I have the list with me and it is very, very depressing to read this. The southern states are relatively better in how much honorarium they give every month. Andhra gives 10,000 as you said. Telangana gives 6,750. Karnataka gives 7,000. Kerala gives 7,000. Tamil Nadu, the lowest in the south, gives 5,000 rupees. But if you look at other states, there are at least 8 to 10 states including Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Assam, Himachal gives 5,000. Uttarakhand, they all give 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees. Jammu and Kashmir, cash-rich Maharashtra gives 2,000 rupees. Gujarat, the Gujarat model, 2,500 rupees. This is the kind of money that they have to get, and even that doesn't reach them on time. And we expect them to put in more hours, put their lives at risk, and continue working for us.
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of, I feel this is an important deviation to look at it from a larger perspective of what unpaid labor means in the subcontinent, and particularly in this case, because we are dealing with Asha workers, I want to point out that hereditary forced caste labor is a feature of South Asia. Why do I say this? Because there are a few types of labor which have been hereditary, enforced and seen by society as voluntary. Which are those things? Scavenging is one of them. Working in the fields and doing odd jobs around the village is one of them. Security service, just being a darban or a watchman in a village is a thing. And also midwifery, nursing is something which has been enforced on particularly Dalit women across centuries. Okay, and what a coincidence that the majority of Asha workers do happen to come from Dalit communities. The fact that the state sees them as volunteers is such a offensive thing to think about from a caste lens, because this is essentially saying that this is voluntary, this is something that you do because it's almost your duty. Right, and that is where the problem is, the fact that you're extracting labor without paying for it, and it then therefore starts mimicking what you call as caste labor. Right, these women being Dalit women is not just a coincidence. I think it's part of the structure in which this entire thing operates. Malu and the article refers to the neoliberal context. I also want to refer to the Brahminical patriarchal context in which these women work.
So just before going to Malu, somebody wrote a letter to South Central, I think last week, saying that why does Sudipto go to caste in every topic? Sudipto.
Because it is the fundamental, basic defining feature of all social relations in South Asia. Marxists would say class is the basis. I say caste is the basis for all relations in South Asia, irrespective of religion also. Islam, Buddhism and all that doesn't matter. That's why I say South Asia.
Malu, I just want to just link to what Pooja was saying. I was reading a parliament reply in which they've said that now there is a Asha benefit package which includes this Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bhima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bhima Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Man Dan. What does all this mean? Yeah, it's basically the pension benefit. So are Asha workers getting all this?
As far as I know, they are not getting all this. Yes, these declarations have been made over a period of time. In between, we'll read this in the news. But if you come to the ground and if you talk to Ashas from Nilgiris or if you talk to Ashas from Kerala, they have no idea. And one important reason is it's not just that the pay is abysmal that it is insulting for the kind of work they do. They work harder than anyone else I know, but also that it is highly irregular. They're all debt ridden. Like, people laugh at them. That's what, like, an Asha from Kerala told me, that, nobody will even give me money because, cash verimbo. Like, when I get the money, I'll pay. When I get the money, I'll pay. And people are making fun of me. When will your money come? Because it comes like once in 6 months sometimes. Now it's apparently a little better. But because now they're everywhere. There is no scheme in which Asha is not there. Take the case of National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. By 2025 is our goal. Ashas have a role. All the non-communicable disease prevention program, Ashas have a role. And so they're everywhere. They're omnipresent. But the only thing that has not increased is their honorarium. And I think there is a fundamental problem with this honorarium business. And I know they're desperate and they're powerless and they cannot fight for employees, like an employee status. But I think the right thing to do is to absorb them and make them employees, because this voluntary honorary workers is actually humiliating to them.
But
That's what I feel.
Malu, I just want to say that, for example, the Bihar activist I spoke to, Shashi Yadav, she said that their fight is for making them grade 4 employees in the health sector. She's saying that the problem is in between. The BJP unions will come and strike. I'll bring Dina in here. The controversy in Kerala is also that some people are saying that it is a BJP union that is striking in Kerala, which is a reason why they are not asking for grade C employee or grade 4 employee status, but they're only asking for honorarium, right? But I think across states, the demand is that they have to be made employees. They cannot be volunteers or activists or informal workers. Leena?
Yeah, Dhanya, that's the problem in the Kerala part of agitation, whereas this group that is demanding is asking for, right now they get an honorarium of 7K and they're asking for it to be increased to 21,000. And they're also asking for retirement benefits of 5 lakh rupees and insurance schemes and all of that. But nowhere in the agitation are they asking for them to be, to be considered as employees and bring that kind of benefits into action, because that would mean, and they are demanding all of these from the state government and not acknowledging the fact that a lot of the terms that are being imposed on them is also the burden of money and burden of incentives is on the central government too. So there is who is this strike against is also putting a question on what actually are they after. So that's an unfortunate reality of this strike that is going on in Kerala. Coming back to an earlier point where you ask what does Asha workers really do, because I've seen them on ground in Kerala, and what I find the most impactful is that they humanize the state to a certain extent, where women are the most vulnerable when maternity health and childcare, they come in to check on you. And I think that itself is a big kind of on the ground when you're vulnerable. Look, someone of my status would not feel that vulnerability, but there are people who might not have access to healthcare in certain kind of period, and these people humanize the state to an extent. And Another thing that I found in this amazing report that you have published is that of 70% of this workforce in healthcare are women, and then when you look at senior positions, there is less than a quarter of them that are occupied by women, and so that makes this, as Sudipto said, this makes it a very patriarchal setup where caste is also coming into play, because it's not these are not jobs, these kind of very small honorarium paid but still having to work 8 to 12 hours and given targets kind of a work atmosphere is not where privileged people go to work. So it definitely plays into that narrative too.
Yeah, and just a point. See, one of the criticisms of the Indian medicine system is that it is a non-meritocratic system in which the so-called doctor does not deal with viscera, with blood, with excreta, because it is quote-unquote impure. This concept of purity and impurity has been a huge handicap in the development of medical science, by medical science, in the development of science itself, in this caste-ridden subcontinent. Now, why do I mention this is because Asha workers are people who are in a position to actually be the first respondents and also the first whistleblowers in the case of a medical how do I put it? There could be a new strain of a disease out there. There could be so many other things out there to which they are the first witnesses. And they need to be further empowered, because they are people who can be actually a great help in dealing with your public health crises, with data collection and things like that, rather than recognize that labor that they put in. You're categorizing it as a menial, as a non-important, non-wage demanding kind of a work, and just a reflection.
To add to that, Dhanya, if I could just give a few examples of the kind of unreasonable demands that are placed on Asha workers. Malu did refer to this at the beginning, and I'd like to hear more from her on this. In Telangana, Ashas are tasked with screening 300 patients every day for tuberculosis. This target seems unachievable given the kind of resources that they're given. They work without any safety concerns. They frequently handle hazardous biomedical waste, and they're not even given proper PPEs, and their health is at risk. Now, they're also expected to work in many cases beyond 12 hours every day. They have to manage large areas, especially in rural areas, and they don't get adequate transportation, and they don't even get additional allowances. But there is some term called references, right, Malu, where they're supposed to bring certain number of people, and based on that, they'll get incentives. Am I right on that?
Yes. So they have these performance-based incentives, and these performance-based incentives are released when they hit a certain target. So they are given numbers. Now, these numbers vary from state to state and from program to program. But the problem is they are in all programs. So every program has a certain target. So tuberculosis elimination program has a certain target. So you have to ensure that treatment patients are completing their treatment. So if they are defaulting, then that is the Asha's failure in a sense, and imagine being in Northeast or in a hilly, difficult to reach terrain, and then you have to, because treatment completion in India is you have to make sure the patient takes the medicine. So that means, in fact, she should be present there preferably when the patient takes the medicine. So you have to meet the patient. He may be living up a hill and it may be raining. It's a very difficult job. Community health work is the most difficult job in the world. And Ashas are actually taking the brunt of all the deficiencies in the system. She's bearing the brunt of it because, as you said, the travel expenses are not reimbursed. There is absolutely no physical or digital connectivity in many of these places, and they have these ridiculous apps which are not updated properly. They have no technical support, no supervision to upload these things. So they're like, we have been entering and it doesn't get saved, so we need to have 20, we need to have 30, otherwise for the 20 and 30 the additional, they'll get a small hike, a small amount as promised. But what happens is they are struggling. I think ever since this digitization in health effort has started, I can vouch that the women health volunteers, including Anganwadi workers, are suffering because on top of everything else, this travel, lack of transportation, and no reimbursement or additional, they're not reimbursed for instance, phone charges, batteries, torches or batteries, or no personal protective equipment. So they are completely on their own. All they are given are roles and responsibilities, targets, and non-functional apps. In many places, they are using their own Android phones. So during pandemic, many of these women used to tell me that our children are doing online schooling in these phones. Now we are like, we are taking it from them, grabbing it from them, and we are taking it to field because we don't have any phone. So we don't provide them any infrastructure. We don't provide them protection. We don't give them salary. We don't reimburse their money, the money spent in the work they do. And they are given targets. This is like, I don't know if this is even happening in the 21st century. These strikes should have happened. I don't know. I think I keep telling some of the people I know that you should not have borne it so far. You should have taken this up so many years earlier, because this should not have gone on for so long.
No, I'm just feeling agitated even listening to you, right? The kind of disregard, the audacity of the state. When I say state here, I mean state governments and the union government, of actually disrespecting 1 million women who are part of your system, who are so crucial to it. You don't want to recognize them as employees. You will not give them salary, but you want them to do everything. And we have so many examples around the world where health agents or workers have been recognized. In fact, we have another article which was published by a policy researcher. His name is Abhijay. He's written about how Brazil has something called a community health agent. They're institutionally hired and they are integrated to the country's health system. He says, look at Pakistan. Pakistan has something called a lady health worker, which there were, of course, a lot of cases in the courts, but they do have government employee status and they have job protection. So maybe India can learn from Brazil, Pakistan. I think even Ethiopia has something called the Health Extension Workers, so HEWs. Are we going to learn from these countries? But I think the problem, like Leena said, when the strike happens, it just becomes political, right? In Kerala, this whole debate about who is behind the strike. Is it against the state government because the BJP is propping it up? And I just want to add something Leena said. The Asha workers have been appearing on channels saying that we are not propped up by anybody, because we have also gone to the parliament, the Jantar Mantar, and we have done strikes there too, where we have asked the union government that we have to be recognized as employees. Yeah, Pooja?
Dhanya, this is again problematic. Even if BJP has propped them up, it doesn't take away from the fact that they are being exploited. They are working in abysmal conditions. So BJP is the opposition in Kerala. The same logic that we apply to political parties elsewhere, right? Congress has every right to support wrestlers, and that doesn't mean that their protest is political. Same, if BJP is propping them up, so be it. But the facts of the matter is that the state government has exploited them and has let them down, not just Kerala, but across the country.
But may I come in there? When I say that this is being politicized, the thing is that there are BJP leaders who's also coming and addressing this in this agitation, but they could themselves go and ask their leaders in the union to reframe the law, which is what is needed to take them on as employees and give them the status that is due to them, for the work that they do. So to just shift the blame on state government is, I think, a convenient cop out of the situation. And I think the blame has to be equally placed on the union and the state government. That's the only one point, I think, to which this current agitation is sort of I'm disagreeing to.
In a time when we lack consensus, such a beautiful consensus among parties of different colors and ideologies across the country dealing with one bunch of women the same way.
Yeah,
what a great consensus.
Yeah.
But Dhanya, if I may just add one thing here. I'm agitated, yes, like you said, but I'm also ashamed that we haven't done enough, because, in Bengaluru's Freedom Park, for example, if IT workers come and talk about exploitation, how many people turn up? I hope that, the people who are listening and all of us too will, it shouldn't be left to Asha workers to protest and demand their rights. I think all of us should play a part, and in whatever ways people can help them amplify the voice, all of us should do that, I think.
Yeah, in fact, I took up the discussion because I got a couple of people writing to us saying that you must discuss the Asha workers agitation. And, to people who are watching, listening, etc., they must be wondering, what can we do? Just sharing, what is the payment that an Asha worker gets? Just asking the governments, why are you paying them so less? Why are you not recognizing them as workers? And I think we owe it to them, right? Because they are doing these jobs as of now as being just volunteers and activists. Yeah, Malu, you want to come in?
I just wanted to add one point, that I think there is so much unity among political leaders and people in power against regularizing them or giving them respect, is because they are caught in at the intersection of, as he already pointed out, market reforms meets Brahminical patriarchy. They are caught there. It is at the intersection. So if you have to correct this, then you have to address the market reforms, the neoliberal restructuring of all institutions, particularly health systems, which, want to take a, detached, the indifferent state. So yeah, we will give you these services, but this you have to take care. Let's find poor women, women from marginalized sections, and let them take care, and let's not pay them enough. So workers, these Asha workers, or we call them workers, but they're not really workers, are caught at this ridiculous, this problematic intersection. And this needs actually some addressing of that structure, and at some level that structure needs to be addressed, and nobody is willing to do that. Everyone wants superficial correction. Let's pay them like 2,000 rupees more and just solve it. Let's just solve it. We don't want to change the structure. We don't want to even go anywhere close to that structure. And that is why there is so much unity, because it becomes problem for everybody. So let's just, invisibilize these women.
In fact, when you're speaking, I was thinking that we also write Asha workers. We should also not normalize it by saying Asha workers. We should start writing as Asha volunteers or activists, because if the government does not recognize them as workers, why should we call them Asha workers? I mean, I think we have to bring that vocabulary where we do not call them workers. That's their demand, right? Make us workers.
Ash activists.
Huh?
Or something. Ash activists.
No, activists will sound like, okay, it's free, let them do for free, right?
Volunteers.
No, but A stands for activism, in that Asha.
Yeah, but I think we should call them volunteers again and again too.
Yeah, or Asha non-paid workers.
Yeah.
Asha unrecognized workers. Something like that. We have to figure out some vocabulary because that's the only way we tell people, right? That they are actually not recognized as employees. So I think that was good discussion. Thank you very much for joining us, Malu. Okay, so I'll quickly read out two letters I'm going to read out only two letters this time. One is a very interesting letter from a person who calls, I think, himself as N747. A subscriber. So he said, I love this podcast since it puts South in the center of my mind. I've always liked TNM's approach. As a Marathi person staying in Bengaluru for 10 years, I always felt disconnected as most of the news and cultural events were only published in local languages. If this is a state of publicized events, we can't imagine how untouched we are with the local and important news. So basically, he talks about how he felt like an outsider. But he has a lot of criticism. He said, specific to episode 17, was it a relaxing week in terms of news? Because the discussion on violence in movies felt really unprepared. It is a responsibility to, so that's a criticism for us. He has criticism for the next, I think for the next one also. He said that being consumer of Hindi and English media, I felt the discussion on cricket was okay, but it felt out of place for me in this podcast. It may not be for your intended audience. I would really appreciate a few minutes of discussion intended for North Indians on educating them on cultural aspects of any southern parts of the country. What do you think about that, Pooja? That we will educate North Indians on...
Showcasing South is a nice suggestion, no? Some part of the South in every episode, if you can showcase and say, hey.
But we do that full time.
We do
need
that
a
full
section.
time.
That is what we exist for.
Yeah.
TNM is to showcase and explain parts of South that North Indians don't
That's true.
understand.
That's
But
true.
on the podcast, they would like it too. This is what this is.
Okay, so now the second letter is from Pradeep Kumar. He says, I'm a software developer working in back-end systems. I am not a cybersecurity expert, but all software developers must be aware of system vulnerabilities. He's saying my concern with the EVM is that it is an opaque system. We don't know how these devices are manufactured and programmed. And he says that the most fundamental assumption of a verification process is that people of the verification process are honest. Knowing how corrupt humans are and how wealthy and powerful the BJP is, it won't take a huge effort to compromise system. So Pradeep's letter is because in last week South Central we had a discussion on EVMs, in which I, of course, thought that, we can't keep talking about EVMs without solid proof, but the others disagreed, saying that we need to keep talking about EVMs. So Pradeep, I think, agrees that we have to keep asking the question on EVMs. So thank you for the letters. Keep them coming. Write to southcentral@thenewsminute.com. Like I said in the beginning, this week, I am in the Delhi office of News Laundry because we are, the two organizations are going to co-publish a few exciting stories, including deep investigations. So become a subscriber. The QR code is here. It is just 500 rupees per month. That's not a lot. We have been talking about Asha workers today. Same way, there are lots of jobs which need your help, your voice. Journalism is one such. Therefore, do subscribe and do read those stories. So it's double advantage for you. One, you get access to both News Laundry and News Minute. And second, you get access to all our paywall stories. Plus, you get to support independent journalism. Wow, such a big bonus. Do take the subscription.
We keep asking for money, but I think it's also important to keep reminding people how we spend the money. So I want to just recall how I spent the money. Last week I was in Madurai. I stayed in the College House hotel, which is 1,250 rupees per day. It was difficult to sleep because there was a lot of noise and all of that. It was right near the railway station, but I think that was worth it. So I spent that money well. I was there for 4 days. For the first 2 days, I took autos, and autos in Madurai are super expensive. So you take an auto at the very minimum, it's 150 rupees. So from the hotel, I had to go to Tirupura. That's the story, by the way. I'm plugging that also. There's an important story from Madurai talking about a conflict which is right now between Hindu right-wing outfits and the civil society groups over there over a dargah, which the Hindu right-wing groups claim is theirs and is a Hindu site and all of that. And nevertheless, so first couple of days I took an auto for 200-250 rupees between the hotel and Tirupura-Kundram. But then I started taking the bus, which is 8 rupees. And I love non-veg food, but I would have it only one day. So my total expense for the day would come to less than 2,000 rupees. And I think that is money well spent. I wouldn't have definitely done that if I was going on my own, on a pleasure trip or exploring. But because it is office money, because it's money that you people contribute, I think it's money that I'm very careful about spending. And I just wanted to flag that over here. I can show you the bills also.
Okay, but I just want to add that I did tell Sudhir to shift the hotel room. Also, there was a fire in that hotel. So, yeah.
There was a fire in that hotel.
Yes, sometimes Sudipto does these things just for the kick of it.
Yeah.
I must add here.
I told him, please don't stay there. Go to a better hotel.
I think over there you also meet real people. So I got a couple of interviews also with people over there saying, oh, you've come to that temple only. Yeah, I'm going to go do a report on that temple. So we went together. One day I shared an auto with that family to go to the temple. Anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, whatever money that you contribute to us is well spent. We do let our reporters travel, and that's very important, right? We can all sit in the studio and do shows, but it's important for reporters to travel, meet people. Also read my colleague's Chris story. Chris has reported on the Asha workers strike. She's spoken to a lot of Asha workers who are still there in that strike. What is your recommendation, Pooja?
So this week I want to recommend this Netflix show. It's a 4-part limited series. You have to watch it. It's called Adolescence. It is haunting. It's about how social media can create these incels in real life. And the story written by my colleague Lakshmi Priya that we have spoken about quite a bit. I heard all those terms being used here in real time. Manosphere, red pill, blue pill. So I would first recommend that you read that piece and then watch the series.
Yeah, Sudeepta, what is your recommendation?
So I recommend that everybody read this public document about the history of the Tirupura-Kundram temple. That is what I'm reading for my report. And I, of course, also read my report when it comes. So this conflict goes back close to a century. And it's a very interesting legal story between how the temple management and the dargah management are constantly, toing and froing over the hill and the entire area and who it belongs to. For me, it's interesting because, we think that the timeline started with a certain party coming to power in the center. We must, through these documents, I think it shows us that these are ancient conflicts, and what is dangerous is that there's somebody sitting over there to make the most, to exploit these ancient conflicts. That is what I suppose is the real thing in Tamil Nadu. That there are, people claim that in Tamil Nadu there are no fault lines. We are all secular, we are all Dravidian, we are all progressive from the Sangam era and all of that. This is a reminder that there are these existing fault lines. If we don't focus on them and if we don't do things in time, there are people waiting to exploit these things. So this 400-page legal history of that temple.
Okay, 400-page legal history of a temple. Leena?
Yeah, well, I definitely would like everyone to read Who Cares for the Carers that Malu has done along with other colleagues of hers. It was an amazing read, but there are the two old pieces that I want to recommend. One is the 2021 piece from News Laundry itself, Hate Factory Inside Kapil Mishra's Hindu Ecosystem, on how these kind of news is manufactured, because we were talking today about all kind of communications and newses, and there is a 2016 NPR piece too, where they tracked down a fake news creator in a suburb and they interviewed them at both, I think it's like an insightful conversations into how a news now is done. Yeah.
So my recommendation for the week is a book called India Inked. It's by journalist Poonam Agarwal. In fact, she was there on one of the episodes. So Poonam has been investigating India's electoral process for a long time now. So this book looks into election war rooms, how our strategies made, electoral bonds, the kind of money in Indian elections. So it's a good investigative book. Poonam Agarwal, it's called India Inked.
Recently, I wrote a book in English which Rupa Publications have published. Its name is The Deccan Power Play. It's all about United Andhra Pradesh politics of 70 years. If anybody is interested, it is available in Amazon. They can read that book. It will give you a lot of insight into what has happened in 40s, 50s and 30s in Andhra Pradesh, in our politics, and right till our contemporary politics. They can read that book.
So I don't know whether you can see this. This is a book called State Without Honor. State Without Honor. It is a book published by Oxford and written by M.S. Srirekha. So it's about women workers in Indian Anganwadis. It's a beautiful book. It really humanizes these workers because we get to see their work on a daily basis. I don't know if people know that Anganwadi workers pay a portion of the rent of the Anganwadi centers in many places in India, because the permissible rent, nobody will give you buildings in the permissible rent that government gives. So we have not known that Anganwadi workers have they have single-handedly held this scheme, ICDS, for decades now. And it has been so effective that government is making active efforts to universalize. But the workers who are the pillars are still honorary workers. And not surprisingly, they are all women. So I think this book is a must. I think if people read this book, I believe they can also understand why the Asha workers are striking and why it is important for us to stand by them and make sure that they get the respect they deserve.
So you have Anganwadi workers, you have Asha workers, you have conservancy workers, all of whom are volunteers in Indian society.
Yes.
We'll come back to you next week with another episode of South Central. And remember, we're a podcast that's available on Apple, Spotify, and all other platforms.